be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory be to you, O Lord.
When Jesus saw the crowds, he felt sorry for them, because they were harassed and dejected, like sheep without a shepherd. And then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is rich, but the laborers are few. So ask the Lord of the harvest to send laborers to his harvest." He summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits, with power to cast them out and to cure all kinds of disease and sickness. And the other names of the 12 apostles: first, Simon, who is called Peter, and his brother Andrew; James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John; Philip and Bartholomew; Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector; James, the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus; Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, the one who was to betray him. These 12 Jesus sent out, instructing them as follows: "Do not turn your steps to pagan territories, and do not enter any Samaritan town. Go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, proclaim that the kingdom of heaven is close at hand. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out devils. You receive without charge, give without charge." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
You know that God's ways is very different from ours. If you didn't figure that out in the last 3 months, I don't know what to do again to help you. Because, you know, your ways and how you would do things and how you would want things to be done is so different from what God does and how God works. And that's kind of where our reading is. Our first reading from the book of Exodus: the people have left Egypt with really miraculous circumstances. They've come into the desert at the very foot of Mount Horeb, or Sinai, where they're pitching their tents. And God says something to the people that is really remarkable. He says, "You yourself have seen what I did with the Egyptians, how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. From this you know that now, if you obey my voice and hold fast to my covenant, you and all the nations shall be my very own, for all the earth is mine, and I will count you a kingdom of priests, a consecrated nation." Beautiful, huh? Would you want to hear that from God? That you, among all the people, I carried you on eagle's wings, that from this you know now that if you obey my voice and hold fast to my commandments, you of all the nations shall be my very own, for all the earth is mine. And in the whole sentence there's only one little word I don't like, and that is if. You see that word if? That is trouble. Because you know, the story of Israel is that they didn't if. They, rather than if, they did something else. Because they did not listen to God's voice. They did not obey God's commands. They did not follow God's ways. They went their own way. They did their own thing. And because they did their own thing, they went their own way. Rather than being the first of all the nations, they became a people who experienced desolation after desolation. They who were supposed to be the crown, they were supposed to be the first of all. They were supposed to be the ones that everyone looks up to. And we know in the exile that they were the ones cast down, the butt of all jokes. They were oppressed. Their nation was decimated. Their temple was destroyed. And they were seen as the people who had no God. Not because God didn't want them, but because of that little if. You know the if? You hearing the if, eh? You feeling it? If only you would listen to my voice, if only you would fulfill my commands, if only you would do what I would ask you to do, then you will be. And most times we hear that reading, we don't hear the if, you know. We hear, you are, you are, you are, you are, you are, full stop. You see that little if? I want you to remember that little if today. Because we are in a particular situation, like them, that God has brought us out of what could have been a disaster in our nation. He has brought us out of what could have been crazy. I mean, major nations in the world with healthcare systems that are to really admire have been totally overwhelmed by what has happened in the last couple of months. And you know, we can't rank up with them. And yet, we were able to come out. But you see the if? That if is so important, because if we believe now that, oh, well, we are God's people, and this is what happened to Israel. Oh, so we are God's people, we could do anything we want. You know the problem now? The if, that if-in, coming back again, you know. Because the call to Israel was a call to live as God's people. And in fact, the fact of being selected and the fact of election puts a burden of obedience upon a people that is much higher than the people who have never experienced God's call. That burden of obedience is because of the love that you have received. And because of this incredible love, this special love, this calling you out in this special way, because we have experienced that in an extremely special way, we have a burden of obedience and a burden of discipline that now is put upon us, because it is not as if we can just do as we want because of that live. So he constituted them a kingdom of priests, a consecrated nation. A kingdom of priests and a consecrated nation. And we know that there were 12 tribes. And so now we can read the gospel in that light. Because in our gospel, when Jesus saw the crowds, he felt sorry for them because they were harassed and dejected, like sheep without a shepherd. Why were they like sheep without a shepherd? All through the Old Testament, the image of sheep and shepherd is about the leaders of Israel, and it's about the kind of care that the leaders are giving to the people, because the leaders are following the covenant or not. The care is given to the people or not. And so the text opens by saying that the command that God gave in the desert has not been fulfilled. And how we know that? Because the people are like sheep without a shepherd. They have not been following God's way. They have not listened to his voice. They have not heard his command. They have not been willing to be obedient to God. And because of the disobedience, the non-listening, the non-caring, and the living how they wanted to live, they are now like sheep without a shepherd. And this first line of the text holds a whole meaning for you and for me. Because to be like sheep who have a shepherd, we know from John's gospel, for the sheep listen to my voice, they know me, and I lead them out. They actually follow the shepherd. That's how we do it, not so? Come now. Help me now, man. Mask or no mask? That's how we do it, not so? We listen to his voice. He leads us out. And we follow him no matter where he takes us, correct? And? Really? Really? Serious? That's how we do it? You know, sheep could be the most stubborn things in the world, eh? And most own way in the world. And what the text is reminding us is that when we are stubborn and own way, we are like sheep without a shepherd. It is not because the shepherd does not have a sheep. It is because the sheep have chosen not to be shepherded. Have you ever had a teenage child who has chosen not to be shepherded? Ever? Ever? Eh? You could jump high, you could jump low, you could sit up, you could sit down, you could lie down, you could do what you want. And if they choose not to be shepherded, what do you do to help them to understand that the way that they're choosing is a wrong way that is going to lead to more pain and destruction than is necessary in growing up? What do? Pray. And that means that when we get on like that, somebody better pray. Somebody better pray. And being in the state of being a sheep without a shepherd is being in the state where we are in rebellion to God, and what we want is to do what we want. We want to do us. We don't want to do what He wants us to do. And we don't want to live how He is asking us to live. Because as we go on, we see the next line. He says, look, the harvest is rich, but the laborers are few. So he uses a new metaphor now. First, the image was sheep and shepherd. Now it's harvest. And anytime you see harvest in the gospel, it's always about the end times. Because you'll have another text. He says, see, the reapers are ready to reap. The harvest is ready for the grain. And the time is coming, and that's always an image of ending, of the ultimate decision making that is necessary. But in this one, what we have is beautiful, because he says the harvest is rich, but the laborers are few. So ask the Lord of the harvest to send laborers to his harvest. The harvest is not mine. The harvest is not my harvest. It's not your harvest. It's the Lord's harvest. It's the Lord's harvest. And he didn't say, go and find some people to join as laborers. Didn't go and pick up some people on the street and tell them, come and start laboring. He says, do what? Ask the Lord of the harvest to send laborers to his harvest. The next line of the text is really amazing, because now he calls the 12 and he gives them authority over unclean spirits with the power to cast them out and to cure all kinds of disease and sickness. The mission that the Father entrusted to Jesus, Jesus is now entrusting to the 12. You hearing it? So that Jesus was given a mission by his Father, and Jesus is now giving this mission to his 12. And the very things that Jesus has been doing in the gospel up until now, casting out unclean spirits, curing all kinds of disease and sickness, this very thing, he is giving them the authority to do what he has been doing. And so the two things we learn in this verse about the church is that the church is a church of mission. Because the Father sent Jesus on mission, Jesus now sends the 12 on mission. The church is a church of mission. And that mission is why we exist. Pope John Paul has famously said, the church does not have a mission. You know, everybody have a mission statement they have up somewhere? So the church does not have a mission. The mission has a church. The church exists for the mission of God. The mission does not belong to the church. It belongs to God. And the mission has a church. We exist for the sake of the mission of God in the world, which is to bring those who are scattered and dejected to experience the loving care of God. So they are not harassed and dejected anymore, but they are like sheep who have a shepherd, who are well fed, who are gathered together in unity in the body of Christ, and who live together as one. That's the mission. And then he gives the names of the 12. And what's interesting here is he says, first, Simon, who is called Peter. So here are the things we're learning about church from this one reading. And it'll help you understand why the Catholic Church operates the way it does. First is that it is about mission. Second, it's about co-responsibility. Because the responsibility Jesus has, he shares it with the 12. This is co-responsibility. He gives them the same authority he has. He shares the same responsibility he has with them. And the 12 have shared it with the bishops. And the bishops with the priests, the religious, the lay consecrated, and the whole laity and the people of God. The mission of Jesus Christ is in co-responsibility. You and I are co-responsible for that mission. Remember, he'll do the same with the 72. So not just the 12. The 72, he also calls and does the same thing. So we know that the church is about mission. We know it's about co-responsibility. But there's something else we learn here. He says, first, Peter. Why first? Well, Andrew was actually the first to be called by Jesus, not Peter. It was Andrew. So why first Peter? Because Peter is the first of all the apostles. Or some will say, the first of equals. And we see in Matthew's gospel this Petrine office. This office of Peter, the office of the Pope, is being elaborated right through the gospel. First Peter, because Peter is the first of equals, and that's why we have a Pope who is the first of equals. The Second Vatican Council talks about the hierarchy of the church and the primacy of the Pope. And in the next sentence it says, and all the college of bishops, when they're gathered with the Supreme Pontiff, exercise full authority on the church. So it is both hierarchy and collaboration or co-responsibility. It is both together. And this also we learn about the church. And then he sends them out into their thing with instructions of what they're to do. And what's important is he says, cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the leper, cast out devils. Go and bring those who are dejected and harassed, bring them into harmony and connection with God. Bring them into harmony and into connection with God. Go and deal with everything that is stopping people from living in harmony with God. Go and remove all of that and bring people into harmony with God. And that's the mission. You receive without charge, give without charge. And this is the final piece that we learn from the text. That this mission is a free gift given to us by God. It is given to us for our salvation. When we left the upper room at Pentecost, we moved to the missioning of the domestic church. Because the family is a domestic church. Everything we do as church is done in the family. And who is a family? Well, what is a family? A family is a community of life and love. And who is a family? Whoever you share community of life and love with, that's your family. When I grew up, my family had a grandmother living with us and another grandmother that didn't live with us. And I spent time in both houses, you know. Lunch was by that other grandmother because she was close to my schools. So I went there every day for lunch. And many a time she would cook and we'd pick up the food on the way home. So what's the family? The family is a community of life and love. And what's the mission? The mission is to help everyone to experience the loving kindness of God. To cure the illnesses of disbelief. To cure the illnesses of unlove. To cure the illnesses of selfishness and greed. To cure the illnesses of those who live without a sense of purpose and love and life. To cure the illnesses that are caused because we are living so much for ourselves that we have forgotten how to live for each other. To cure the illnesses of I, and no sense of a we, and no sense of a you. The family is a school of life and love because that's where we learn how to love. And when the family is what it's supposed to be, it becomes that place of love And love is a mission. There's one commandment I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. That's the mission. That's the mission. And it is in the family that we start understanding and learning what God wants for us. And He has shared His mission with the family. He shared His mission with the family. And when the family is what it is supposed to be, then in the family what we experience is this unconditional love given to each other so that no one holds anything for themselves. And that's how children learn to be healthy in a community of life and love. The family is a school of love. And it's where we are being called to live and to live as love. In our reading today, it's about the mission and the missioning of the church. He missions the 12. And by missioning the 12, what he's doing is not just giving them something, he's incorporating them into the mission that belongs to him. Missioning the family as a domestic church is incorporating the family into what belongs to Jesus. And what belongs to Jesus is a mission that God entrusted into his hands. And that mission is entrusted into your hands. And it is in your hands, right where you are, that you have to experience the church as a church of mission. Where you have to experience the church as a church of co-responsibility. It is in your family that you have to understand that you share the responsibility for the mission, and you are living that out in your church. Your church, which is your home, because that's the domestic church, or what John Paul would say, the church in miniature. You have to understand that in your family, and as a family, not only are you missioned, but as a family, you are called into a hierarchy, because first is the universal church. But first is also the domestic family, because the family existed before the church, and the family existed before the state, and the family existed before any other institution. And in that sense, first is the family. And as we understand the mission, we understand that we are a people who are on mission, that you have a mission, and it's not to go to Africa or to go to Ireland or to go to some part in the world. You have a mission to live this community of life and love where you are. And it's easier to go to Africa than do that, ain't it? Talk to me now. Eh? Plenty easier to go to Africa or somewhere else in the world than to do this. But this is the mission. This is your call. And it is for this that God brought you into the world. And it is in this time of COVID that we have to learn how to live the mission. To live it fully. And if we do that, then the little if will not be a problem in our life. Then the little if will not be a troublesome if. Then that little if, we would smile when we hear it, because we will be able to say that, Lord, we listen to your voice. We hear your command. We live as you ask us to live, and we respond to you in every way that you ask of us. Amen.